In the opening scene, we are introduced to Cash. Before doing his daily activities, Cash exercises to maintain his body's health. Cash is a former right-hand man of the village's most powerful mafia boss. But one day, Cash decided to repent after his younger sibling died of an overdose. For now, Cash spends time at a farm helping his brother-in-law, Finney. Not only that, but Savannah, Finney's daughter, also helped with the farm work. Savannah was very close to Cash, her uncle. Savannah's mother had died a few months before. After feeding all the livestock, Cash invited Savannah to lunch at a village cafe. When they got there, Cash and Savannah were waiting for Finney, who had promised to join them afterwards. As Cash was using the restroom, 3 thugs unexpectedly approached Savannah. Apparently, these thugs were subordinates of Cash's former boss in the Mafia. Not long after, Cash came and immediately asked Savannah to wait outside. Cash inquired about the 3 men's intentions before they threatened to interrupt his lunch. One of them said that the Mafia boss wanted to talk with Cash about the farm. When he heard this, Cash was a little confused as to why the Mafia boss suddenly wanted to discuss their family farm, but the thugs laughed and said that Cash should ask Finney, his brother-in-law. Cash quickly rushed home to ask Finney about this matter. When Cash got home, he immediately asked Finney about what the Mafia boss had to do with their farm. Finney finally said honestly that, in fact, he mortgaged the land certificate for their farm to the Mafia boss. Finney used all the money to buy animal feed because for the past few months they had no money. Cash was furious because he believed Finney should have mortgaged the farm to the bank, not the Mafia. Cash was sure that soon the Mafia would definitely confiscate their farm. The next day, Cash met the only son of the Mafia boss, Zachy. Cash inquired about the debt that Finney had received to mortgage the ranch. Zachy responded that the amount was so high that he was certain Cash would not be able to repay it. However, there was one way to pay off all the debts. Cash had to go directly to the Mafia boss and negotiate with her. Simultaneously, uninvited guests unexpectedly visited Finney and Savannah. They're the Mafia boss's men. Here, they all forced Finney to pay his debt right now, even though it wasn't due yet. They also didn't hesitate to beat Finney several times, causing injuries to Savannah in the process. They took Finney out of the house and threatened to shoot him dead. When Cash returned home while the thugs left, he was shocked to find his brother-in-law battered. Savannah informed Cash that the Mafia boss's men had just beaten both her and Finney. Finney then apologized, realizing that his actions were solely due to his daring decision to borrow money from the Mafia boss. Cash asked Finney to calm down, and he promised that he would sort out all these problems. Not long after that, Cash went to the police station to ask for help from the sheriff. But after Cash told him all the problems, the sheriff said that they couldn't help because of a lack of evidence. In the end, Cash left, and he thought there was no other way but to negotiate directly with the Mafia boss. Cash quickly went to Big Cat, the Mafia boss. She welcomed Cash nicely. Here, Cash asked what he had to do so that all of Finney's debts could be considered paid off. Big Cat said that this was very easy. Big Cat wanted Cash to work for her, and she would give him 3 jobs. And if Cash succeeded in completing all those 3 jobs, then all of Finney's debts would be considered paid off. There was no other choice. And in the Cash granted Big Cat's request. That night, Cash began his first job with Sam, one of Big Cat's men. Cash and Sam were closely observing a house they suspected to be the headquarters of Big Cat's competitor. After that, Cash conducted a close-up inspection of the house and confirmed the presence of Mafia members and Big Cat's business rivals. Cash quickly returned to the car and reported it all to Sam. Sam immediately contacted his other colleagues to plan an attack on the Mafia, who had become Big Cat's rival for the night. Not long after, Sam's friends arrived, so they immediately carried out the attack.
My gun wasn't loaded.
Cash, Sam, and the others were able to easily finish off Big Cat's rival. Cash's first job was considered finished, and they immediately went to Big Cat's place to give a report. The next day, Cash confided in a priest, Wilder. It turned out that the priest is Cash's close friend, and in the past, he was also Big Cat's subordinate. After Cash explained all of his problems, the priest suggested that Cash be patient and pray to God. The priest was sure that if Cash continued to pray, God couldn't just keep quiet. The next morning, Big Cat's men picked Cash up to do his second job. This time, Cash was to carry out a drug deal transaction with a Mexican. After finding out the transaction location, Cash and Big Cat's men immediately went there. Upon arrival at the transaction place, Cash and one of Big Cat's men, who was the middleman, immediately took out the goods. However, simultaneously, one of the men fatally shot the middleman. Of course, Cash got angry because it wasn't the plan until the transaction was done. The man responded that he had always been extremely frustrated with his friend because he consistently insulted his family. To avoid further issues, Cash promptly instructed the man to dispose of his friend's body, anticipating the arrival of a Mexican dealer. Once they had removed the man's body, the Mexican dealer and his subordinates arrived on site. Here, the dealer even inquired about the middleman, indicating that he was reluctant to conduct a transaction without his presence. Cash tried to lie by saying that the middleman wasn't feeling well, so they represented him today. However, the dealer remained unwilling to comply and opted to cancel the transaction. However, Cash did not want to fail on his second job. Instead, he immediately killed the dealer and his men. After that, Cash and the thug immediately took the dealer's money, so the second job was considered successful. A few hours later, Cash was washing the car, accompanied by Finney. Cash told Finney that he was paying off all of Finney's debts to Big Cat by carrying out 3 orders from her. Now, Cash has successfully carried out 2 jobs and only has 1 left. Hearing this, Finney asked if Cash was sure that Big Cat would keep her promise if Cash had finished his 3 jobs. Cash then answered that he would slaughter them all if Big Cat fails to keep her promise. That afternoon, Cash and Finney taught Savannah how to shoot. Cash deliberately trained Savannah so that she could protect herself. On the other hand, Cash started his backup plan of taking down Big Cat and her drug empire. He agreed to work hand in hand with the deputy sheriff by providing him all the evidence of her illegal activities. Later, the deputy sheriff came across one of Big Cat's transporters. The woman attempted to shoot him, but the deputy sheriff quickly neutralized the situation and confiscated the drugs. That night, Sam and one of his friends picked Cash up to go to Big Cat's base. Sam explained that Big Cat was having a party at his headquarters, so Cash had to attend it. At Big Cat's house, all of her men had gathered. Big Cat warmly welcomed them and treated them to a meal. Later, Big Cat gave a speech saying that this party was a Thanksgiving because their business had increased rapidly. After that, Big Cat invited all her subordinates to move to the next room, as she had something important to show them. Shortly after, Sam emerged, escorting a wheelchair-ridden individual with a cloth covering his body. Upon opening it, Sam discovered that the individual inside was the deputy sheriff, who was now a captive. Now, Big Cat's subordinates will witness the deputy sheriff's severe torture before his execution. Big Cat and all her subordinates were cheering with joy, knowing that the deputy sheriff, who had always disrupted their business, was about to meet his end. Meanwhile, Cash felt very guilty, so he came forward and asked for permission so that he could finish off the deputy sheriff, but not in this place. Apparently, Cash planned to save the deputy sheriff, but unfortunately, Big Cat refused Cash's request. Then, without hesitation, she killed the deputy sheriff. Following this, Cash declared that he had finished all his tasks, thereby clearing his family's debt to Big Cat, as per the original agreement. Upon hearing this, Big Cat declared the agreement no longer valid, requiring Cash to work for Big Cat indefinitely to repay his debt. Naturally, upon hearing the response, Cash felt disheartened by the deception, leading him to opt for silence and depart. The following day, Cash contacted Finney and told him that Big Cat had broken her promise. As a result, Cash urged Finney to travel as far as possible with Savannah, warning that if they remained in this area, Big Cat would undoubtedly continue to harass them. Meanwhile, Cash planned to massacre Big Cat and all of her men who had lied to him. Finney said he understood, but he and Savannah would worship at church first because they had a priest appointment prior. Not long after that, Cash watched Big Cat's base from a distance. He also noted down all the areas to identify the areas that Big Cat's men didn't patrol. Meanwhile, the priest, Cash's best friend, led morning worship at the church where Finney and Savannah were present. After the worship, Finney and Savannah immediately said goodbye to the priest because they intended to leave the village that day according to Cash's order. However, just as they were about to board the car, Sam and his colleagues suddenly attacked Finney. Savannah couldn't help but cry hysterically upon witnessing her father's complete beating. Not long after, the priest came and managed to save Savannah and Finney. However, this incident left Finney seriously injured, prompting an immediate hospital rush. Cash arrived at the hospital where Finney was receiving treatment a few minutes later. Upon entering the room, Cash was shocked to discover that Finney had died due to excessive bleeding. Cash could only hug Savannah and try to calm her down. Cash then met the priest outside the room. At this point, Cash requested that Wilder secure Savannah at his home as he intended to exact revenge on Big Cat and her game. The priest could not forbid Cash, and he only asked him to always be careful. Some of Big Cat's thugs were on of the sites patrolling. Suddenly, Cash arrived with the intention of killing both of them. After successfully killing them both, Cash immediately left the place. A few minutes later, the medical team and the sheriff began securing the bodies of Big Cat's men. Not long after, Big Cat arrived and immediately asked for information from the sheriff regarding the deaths of her men. The sheriff said they were likely killed by Cash because he found Cash's car key, which had been left behind. At this juncture, the sheriff opted to surrender to Big Cat to avoid a similar fate to the deputy sheriff who had perished at the hands of Big Cat. The next day, Sam and his gang came to Wilder's house. If he wanted to be safe, Sam asked the priest to hand Savannah over. Evidently, they already knew that the priest would definitely entrust Savannah as Wilder was the closest person to Cash. The priest Wilder tried to lie by saying that Savannah was not there, but unfortunately Sam didn't believe it, and he immediately beat up Wilder. Savannah, who was in hiding, finally surrendered herself to Sam in order for him to stop beating Wilder. Before taking Savannah away, Sam told Wilder that if Cash wanted Savannah to survive, then he had to surrender to Big Cat. Later, Cash arrived at Wilder's house, shocked to learn that Sam had taken Savannah by force. Here, the priest apologized because he couldn't look after Savannah. Wilder also conveyed a message from Sam, asking Cash to surrender if he wanted to save Savannah. Hearing this, Cash begged the priest to help him once again. It turned out that Cash had plans to kidnap Big Cat's only son, Zachy. As a result, Big Cat would definitely want to let Savannah go. After hearing this explanation, Wilder was willing to return just like before to help Cash. The two of them immediately went to see Zachy, Big Cat's son, at his office. When they got there, Cash and Wilder were able to kidnap Zachy easily. After that, Cash contacted Big Cat to reveal that Zachy was with him. If Big Cat wanted her son to be safe, then she must be willing to hand over Savannah. Big Cat didn't want anything bad to happen to Zachy, so she finally agreed with Cash that they would meet at 4 p.m. at Big Cat's headquarters. After realizing that Big Cat would never fulfill her promise, Cash devised a new plan. Then, Cash asked the priest to take Zachy to Big Cat's place alone while he would infiltrate Big Cat's headquarters from the back door. Without waiting for anything, Wilder immediately left, tying Zachy to the hood of his car. Minutes later, Wilder arrived at Big Cat's headquarters, but according to what Cash guessed, Big Cat broke her promise and instead held the priest at gunpoint. She also didn't want to let go of Savannah, but Wilder threatened her back, and he immediately put Zachy at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Big Cat's man still had Savannah tied up in the under guard. Savannah realized that there was a sharp iron behind her, so she moved her chair closer and then rubbed the bond in her hand against the sharp iron. As a result, Savannah managed to untie herself, grab a gun, and shot the man without delay. Hearing the gunshot, Big Cat immediately ordered Sam to check what happened inside, while she and her other men attacked Wilder, and gunfire broke out. Moreover, Cash continued to attempt entry into the house through the back entrance, eliminating each guard in turn. On the other hand, Wilder was still fighting against Big Cat's men. Here, Wilder managed to kill several of Big Cat's men, but unfortunately, Zachy was able to escape and then attacked Wilder. On one occasion, Zachy managed to shoot Wilder in the arm, and Wilder immediately shot Zachy in the leg. With an injured leg, Zachy tried to run away into the forest, but there were two vicious dogs that attacked him. Upon hearing Zachy's screams, Big Cat swiftly pursued him, only to discover that his vicious dogs had already devoured Zachy. Meanwhile, a gunfight broke out between the priest and one of Big Cat's men, resulting in the priest's eventual victory, albeit at the cost of gunfire. Next, the action shifts to Cash, who successfully gained entry into the headquarters and attempted to rescue Savannah, who Sam was pursuing. Cash and Sam engaged in a fight, but in the end, Cash succeeded in killing Sam. Cash then encountered Savannah, who she immediately asked to leave. Unfortunately, just as Cash was about to leave, he encountered Big Cat, leading to another shootout. At this point, Cash instructed Savannah to exit the window, all the while continuing to fend off Big Cat's attacks alone. Quickly, Savannah obeyed what Cash said and then went out through the window. Meanwhile, Cash was already weak and his gun had run out of bullets. Big Cat held him at gunpoint, forcing him to surrender. However, when Big Cat was about to finish Cash, Savannah returned and stabbed her to death, ending the chaos of the day. A few weeks later, Wilder the priest was giving a lecture in the church. It turned out that he also managed to survive because the shot from Big Cat's man only hit his arm and shoulder. Meanwhile, Cash and Savannah continued to take care of their farm, bringing the movie to the end.